Welcome to Unforbidden Truth. I'm Andrew. Today I'll be speaking with convicted double murderer Steve Nicholson. Stephen Lynn Nicholson was convicted of the 2010 drowning deaths of his two young children, 15-month-old Ella Grace Stafford and 13-month-old Jonathan Allen Sanderlin. He was found guilty of premeditated first-degree murder, felony murder, first-degree child abuse, and second-degree murder. The Michigan Court of Appeals upheld his convictions in 2012, and he is currently serving life without the possibility of parole in Jackson, Michigan. Here's my interview with Steve Nicholson.
Hello. This is a prepaid debit call from
Steve.
a prisoner at the Michigan Department of Corrections, G. Robert Cotton Facility. If you feel you are being victimized or extorted by this prisoner, please contact GTL Customer Service.
I was born in Annapolis Hospital, and I believe that's Garden City, Michigan. But yeah, so from the Detroit area. You know.
Okay. So can you recall any positive memories that stick out to you from your childhood?
Positive memories. Yeah, I got a lot of positive memories. I had a dad and a mother growing up. They were married for pretty much, my whole life until I ended up leaving the house at 16, but that's another story. But it wasn't always the greatest life, but we had good memories. We used to go play strikeout, which is a form of baseball where you paint a box on a wall and you can play baseball with two people. You just act like you got a man on first, man on second, man on third, depending on where you hit the ball. Taught me how to pitch very well. Every time we used to go to Southwest Detroit and play that game, we used to always stop at the Dairy Queen on Michigan. I hated fishing growing up, but my dad used to always take us. And even though I hated fishing, the memories of being in the park and just, playing football and things like that were always fun. Spending time with my brothers, and I had three brothers. One of them was technically my cousin, but he's just like my brother, Corey, and my sister. I was the oldest, and, they could have been annoying because it was a lot for a young child to kind of be taking care of them kids, but it was a good memory, though, A lot of good memories of going to church, a lot of good memories of just playing in my neighborhood, which is on the west side of Detroit, by the way. Just a lot of good memories, man. Spending time with my grandma, which was kind of like a third parent. I had a pretty big family. We were inclusive, and going and spending time at birthday parties, Thanksgiving, Christmas, all that type of stuff. For being kind of poor growing up and having some bad things in my life growing up, it was a lot of good memories, actually.
That's good to hear. What about any negative memories that stick out to you from your childhood?
Well, it's funny how sometimes the positive memories seems like they don't leave as much of an impact as the negatives, because if you listen to people, it seems like they talk about negative more than positive. And I don't want that to sound like that with me when I talk about this, but I have a lot of negative memories. My dad was a good dad, but he had a lot of flaws, which we all do. And there was times we used to drink too much, and he'd get a little aggressive, at times, and be a little abusive, and certain ways, which not nothing sexual, nothing like that. But I don't want to go into detail because I don't want to offend him, because he has got offended in the past, but. He's made a lot of mistakes, and it definitely had a lot of impact on us. My sister, when she was born dead, and she was dead for almost 15 minutes, probably 10. She was born at Garden City Hospital. I keep trying to get my mom to get the records, but we thought she was dead, and it just was really traumatic. And then my mom's friend, Jill Johnson, she, as the doctors were leaving to go write up her death certificate and whatnot, do all that paperwork, she kind of pushed by him, and they said, you can't go back there. And so something that was negative turned into something great, because when she just put her hands on her and said, I command you to breathe in Jesus' name, she started breathing. And I'm not trying to preach to anybody, but it was a negative memory that turned into a positive. But, there was a lot of, growing up in Detroit for most of my life, it was a strange environment as a white kid. You don't know the world is so big, and so to me, a lot of the racism I dealt with, from other black kids, it was it was traumatic in a sense, because to me that was my world, and I didn't know anything different really than that, except for going to see my other family that lived in the suburbs and whatnot. But I didn't understand the world at that point, so some of them memories were negative, but they built a lot of character in me. Well, I'll give you one specific memory I had when I was in first grade. I remember this girl got her head busted open at Detroit Public Schools at Kosciuszko on Tireman. I forget what street. It was on Tireman and some other street. But I was sick that day, and they brought her in the principal's office, and her head was kind of busted open, and it was bad. And I just wanted to pinpoint on that specific memory to be more specific because I've been vague so far. But yeah, there's other stuff, but just for the sake of time, I'll leave it there.
Okay. So I know you said you suffered some abuse that you don't want to talk about. Was there any other type of abuse or trauma that you went through growing up?
Well, I mean, like I said, not to get super specific, but I mean, there was times where you just get smacked around a little bit. Sometimes got whooped a lot. That's for sure. I'm not like a huge denier of physical abuse. Not physical abuse, but physical punishment. I don't think taking a belt or something like that is a horrible thing to do. Like they try to outlaw pretty much now. But sometimes much. I remember my dad had a belt with Indians and buffalo and stuff on it, and I remember a couple times I got whooped with that belt. It looked like I had a Western movie, on the cheek. But as far as major abuse goes, there's a lot of psychological more than anything. I was grounded a lot as we phased out of the whooping stage, because my dad told us at one point, you guys are too old to get whooped now. So there was psychological abuse. Being grounded so much, it kind of can play with your mind, I think, a little bit. But it was also again, it was character building though in a lot of ways. I owe a lot of my success even in prison now to that. I'm able to be patient because of that. So, as far as abuse goes, I wasn't bullied a lot, because if I let anybody bully me, I would get in trouble. So it was. People tried to bully me, but I didn't really get bullied. But I still think it had an impact on my life. It caused me to have that what psychologists call that cool pose, or that tough guys, where I just have to be the big macho man all the time, and I'm not going to let nobody tell me what to do or boss me around or control anything. So there was times where it was negative towards me, but I don't know. I can't give you a whole lot of shock value when it comes to, certain abuses I've suffered growing up. And if I'm being too loquacious, just let me know. I can stop talking so much.
What was your behavior like at home growing up?
Oh man, my behavior was, to be honest, I wasn't a bad kid. I really wasn't. I believe my mom, my dad, all my family would tell you the exact same thing. I was a good kid. My school records would reflect that. I mostly got straight A's in my schooling. Like I said, it was primarily Detroit schools, but I went to a couple other schools outside of the actual city, Detroit, in my elementary years, and 1 year of junior high. But we used to get spanking sometimes, or maybe get a slap, maybe for being what was supposed to be smart alecky. Maybe we weren't even all that smart alecky. Maybe it was just impatience by my dad. I don't know, but specifically. But to be honest, we weren't really bad kids. We didn't do nothing horrible. I wasn't one of those kids that was, getting in trouble in school all the time. I didn't start getting in trouble in school until I got older and began having to actually fight a little more, because people were, just picking on me for just being a nerdy white kid, But like my mom will attest to this right now. Like anytime she was, depressed or feeling horrible because of maybe an argument or a bad situation she had with my dad, I immediately would go clean up the house for her, do extra stuff to help with the kids, and and she knew it was me trying to help her. And so, from that sense, I was actually a really good kid, I believe. And I honestly could talk to my Aunt Sandra Kirby, my Aunt Linda has passed away, my uncles, my Uncle Mitch, my Uncle Tom, my Uncle Larry, my Aunt Janice, which I don't really talk with her a lot right now, but that's something else. But my whole family, they'll tell you I was a good kid. I mean, I don't know. You know, I never really thought about this really till now. I didn't get in much trouble. I think the most trouble I might have did is maybe take a few pieces of candy out of the, like, church classrooms maybe when I was growing up. But I remember the first time I stole a candy bar from the store, I think I was in 3rd grade. I got in trouble. I had to go back to the store, tell them I stole it, and I just wanted some candy. You know, we didn't have a lot of money, so yeah, I didn't do a lot of horrible stuff though growing up. I just didn't.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
So the same question, but what was your behavior like in school, focusing more on your middle school and high school years?
Well, behavior in school. I'm trying to think if I ever really got in trouble for anything. I mean, the worst thing I can remember doing, well, technically I think that was 5th grade, but it's close enough to middle school. I remember one time I told this girl, Janice, I can't remember her last name off the top of my head. I really liked her, though, but she was not paying attention to me. And so one day she's getting off the bus, and you know how kids can be, you know, they fight even though they kind of like each other. And so I thought it was, I never did anything like this before. I thought it would be funny to say something, you know, about her, even though I turned out to be really mean. I told her to, hey, close your legs, the war is closed, you know. It's stupid kid stuff, you know, but that was probably one of the worst things I've done in school. I mean, my brother was getting bullied one year, and I beat up his bully. And I beat him up to the point where he kept fighting, and I just kept punching him, and to the point where I was crying because I was like, I don't want to keep hitting you, you know what I mean? It was an odd situation because him and his brother ended up telling all the kids in the neighborhood, oh yeah, he taped rocks to his hands. Well, how do you tape rocks to your hands? But in high school, you know, I started smoking weed when I was about 14. And you know, that didn't make me become bad. I think it just made me become more like despondent and just distant and not worried about talking to, you know, teachers as much as I used to. I still liked school, but I was more focused on just going out, playing sports, smoking weed. So I just kind of got distant from that. But I never really became like a bad kid, like the kind of kid you see on Dangerous Minds or that other classic movie with the Latino teacher who's teaching them bad kids in California in the 80s. I can't remember the name of the movie off the top of my head, but yeah, I wasn't a horrible kid. I think the worst thing I did was probably sell a little weed when I got into 10th grade or 11th, maybe it was 11th grade. And then when I got into 12th grade, that was the year actually that the Twin Towers got hit. And at that point, I had actually dropped out of school for a year at that point, and that was when I had really got a little far off into my lifestyle. Because back then, I did used to get involved in the rave scene a little bit, and you know, I did sell drugs for all my life until I came to prison, and that started with that. Well, it escalated when I got into the rave scene because, you know, we were going to different places selling different drugs and whatnot. But anyways, when I tried to go back to school in 12th grade, I had something that's common with most people who've done a lot of ecstasy is, you know, you go through a serious depression, and it was really serious, so I began to drink heavily. And I remember the day the Twin Towers got hit in New York, I remember seeing it, and I just it didn't even faze me. I had no thoughts of it. I just said, yeah, that's cool. This sucks. I'm leaving, and I'm going to go smoke a blunt. So, you know, that was when I probably was at my worst in school, you know, 11th, 12th grade. But I was never a bad kid in school, ever. I don't think any of my teachers would ever say that. If they would remember me, I doubt they'd ever give you a bad report about me. So,
besides selling weed in high school, did you engage in any type of criminal activity as a juvenile?
I mean, I got into I guess the best term I could use I call it fringe gangbanging, but that didn't last long in my life because usually gangbangers, they need it because they don't have a family. And I had a decent family growing up, so I got out of that quick. But yeah, I involved myself with a little bit of a little bit of gunplay. You know, I wasn't out there shooting people or nothing like that, though. You know, but I mean, you do begin to realize, hey, as you get a little older, hey, even though you're kind of clouded with judgment from drinking and smoking, you realize, hey, life's a little more serious than we realize. So, hey, yeah, you pick up a gun because, you know, you just feel, you know, you feel that fear from, you know, that almost prison-like society that of living in Detroit, what it can, because that's what it can be like. But as far as any like major drug dealing in school or any, there's really not too much. Like I said, most of my teachers liked me. Even when I was despondent in 11th, 12th grade, and I was not smoking weed as much as not paying attention to school, my teachers saw my potential. They couldn't draw it out of me. You know what I mean? So yeah, there was not a lot more criminal activity in school. No, back that I can think of.
Okay. What about an adult? Did you engage in any type of criminal activity prior to these 2 cases you're serving time for now?
Unfortunately, I have to say for sure. That's one of the things I'm worried about. I'm not worried about it. It's one of the things, though, I have to address as I do my commutation here very soon. I have an assault with a deadly weapon charge, but that was, if I could explain, that was for a vehicle. I was driving at the time. There was this guy kept trying to run into I had a 69 Oldsmobile Delta 88, and he kept trying to run into my car with his little piece of crap Mazda or Toyota, whatever it was, and I just got tired of it, and I started the car up and turned around on the block and seen them sitting in the car smoking weed, and it was nighttime, and I just ran into the front of their car, and that was done with. It wasn't really intentional. I had no intent on hitting them. It's just that I just was like, again, that machismo or machismo, however you want to pronounce it, it kind of came out like, all right, you want to threaten me? Well, here you go. Here's something for you. And it sounds horrible now that I'm saying it, but it's just part of what it was. I mean, I got into selling drugs, into a pretty heavy lifestyle of selling drugs, actually, and one time I was drinking and driving. I had an ounce of cocaine on me, and because I was speeding, I got charged with that. I had a drug house when I was 17 or so, but it was odd. I was talking to one of the crackheads that used to come to my drug house. His name is Chris Leach. He's still living in Downriver area of Detroit, and I talked to him about a year and a half ago, and he was like, yeah, they used to call me Cheese. That was my nickname. Cheese, you remember, man, even when you used to sell us weed at your house, man, because I never sold them crack, I just sold them weed and pills, and he said, even when you were selling us weed, man, he was like, you always used to talk to us about Jesus, and I said, really? I said, I don't even remember that, but, because I grew up in the church, it's not like I came to prison and found God. I grew up in the church, and so, yeah, I had that drug house, but it's not like I was being a menace. I used to always make sure it was clean. If people were coming over being loud or coming over too late, I would tell them, hey, these are not business hours, don't come back this time, and things of that nature. So I tried to be like, I don't know, like the mafia. They try to be, they try to be criminals, yet, conduct themselves with integrity, or so-called integrity, just so they put on a front, and it sounds horrible now that I'm thinking about it, but it's just kind of what my life was like. I didn't like the big braggadocious gangsters. I liked the more like Scarface. Everybody loved Scarface growing up. I didn't like that guy. I liked the guys, who were cool and clean, and the mafia type guys. That was more my style growing up. But yeah, and I got assaulted by the police actually at one time. This is right recently, or pretty close to the time I got locked up for this for the deaths of my children, and I was actually, and my mother, she would tell you, the story, and even my daughter's mother may even tell you the truth of the story, that we were at a bar or at a liquor store, and a guy was getting picked on by 3 drunk guys, and I told him, hey man, leave this guy alone, and they tall turned because they're drunk, they want to fight me. Well, I mean, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but I know how to fight. So this big football lineman-looking guy comes at me, super slow, tries to swing on me. I duck, hit him one time, knocked him out. And I'm not trying to be cool and tough. The guy probably just couldn't fight. But so, anyways, knocked him out. The other guy ran when he saw that, the little guy. Then another guy who was a little bit bigger than me. He tried to fight me, and we actually got into a little tussle, and he couldn't do nothing. And I kind of slammed him on the ground, and he ended up leaving. And the police got called, and and then they came. I was just sitting in the car because I was trying to stay out of the trouble, and they were like looking at me like I was the aggressor, and I wasn't drunk or nothing. And my girlfriend, my daughter's mom at the time, and her mother were there, Wendy Moritz and Taylor Stafford, and and they were telling the cops, hey, he didn't do nothing, he didn't do nothing. But as soon as I got out of the car, a group of them just jumped on me and had their knees all on me. And so then when they took me to the police station, he was trying to pick me up by my cuffs. My hands were behind my back, and he's like ripping my shoulder out of my socket. And I told him, hey, stop it. He said, quit resisting. And he wouldn't stop. So I just kind of flung my head back, and I ended up hitting him. And they charged me with assault on a police officer for that. And I technically did, but he was hurting me. And so that's probably like the worst of an explanation of the worst of my charges prior to this. But yeah, that's about all my charges. I mean, it wasn't nothing crazy. I wasn't out there, catching, concealed weapon charges and nothing major. But then again, I just didn't get caught also for all the drugs I sold too, which I do regret that almost more than anything I've done, because I don't know how many people I've affected negatively by selling those drugs when I should have been helping save people's lives my whole life, So yeah, that's pretty much the extent of my criminal background.
Okay. So prior to the cases you're serving time for now, what was life like for you in the free world?
It was really good from the standpoint of feeling like I was successful as a drug dealer. I mean, I bought my house on a land contract in about 03, 04 in Lincoln Park on Champaign Street. And, I thought I had made it at that point. I mean, I had done a couple huge flips with Norco pills and hydrocodone pills, a couple huge flips to really stack my money up and be able to buy that house. And, I had my fiance at the time. And then, all that stuff just hit the fan because my brother, he was left for dead. He was given too much Xanax and cocaine by one of his best friend's moms. And this was in Melvindale, one of the most crooked cities you'll ever find. And because the mother, she was an informant for the city, and when she left him for dead, they never called the ambulance, and they just, and they could have saved his life, and they didn't. And the ambulance told us, the EMTs told us that he could have been saved, but she was afraid to get in trouble. So once that happened, I really spiraled at that point. I began drinking again because I hadn't been, on drugs or drinking at all at that time. And that just when life got a little bit bad, and I kind of fell off for a few years. I was only 21 or 22 at that time, though, and and then when I got my head back on straight, and I moved back down because I had went up to Cadillac, Michigan for a little while, where my son's mom was living, and then this is way before she got pregnant with him, and then I came back down to Detroit and got back into doing what I knew how to do, which was making money, and I was getting ready to start my businesses up again. And like I said, from the standpoint of feeling like I'm successful, making money, and being able to help my family whenever they needed it, life seemed like it was great, but it wasn't what I knew it should have been. It just wasn't. And even right before this happened with my children, I had about $18,000 saved up in a safe, and I was getting ready to start my carpet cleaning business again, which, it's going to sound silly, but I was going to call it Carpet Munchers. I thought I was going to have this huge clientele because of that. I was just still being a smart aleck kind of a kid almost. But I was going to do selling cars legitimately, getting a dealer's license, selling houses, landscaping, and snow plowing. I was going to have all them businesses. That was the second time I was going to do that because I was going to do that the first iteration of my success in my life, and I never got around to doing it either time. And it was just odd because I knew I was, I kept, feeling God trying to call me back to go to church, and I kept telling my Taylor Stafford, my daughter's mother, because she was living with me at the time. I said, we're going to start going back, and I just never did, and that's unfortunately what led up to the night in question, losing my kids, but life was seemingly good though, from that standpoint.
Okay. So let's talk about those crimes that you're in prison for now. You're serving life without the possibility of parole for first-degree and second-degree murder for the drowning deaths of your 13 and 15-month-old children.
Well, what led up to it was literally stupidity. I mean, you're talking about, I took Taylor Stafford, that's my daughter's mother, because I had two different babies' mothers. I literally, took her to work the night before, and because she was at work and I was always running around, Never sold drugs with my kids, never had anybody come to my house, ever. I mean, I never involved my kids with that stuff, even though I have full custody of both of them. Stayed up all night. It's going to sound so stupid, but this is literally what it was. Stayed up all night. Just because I was like, I'm going to watch the movies. I don't ever get some time alone, you know? And so I was going to get an hour of sleep before my son woke up, because he always wakes up early. And he happened to wake up earlier than normal. So, well, I got to get up. I'm not going to leave him in there, you know, without, you know, checking his diaper and all that stuff. So I ended up getting up early with him. And I knew I had a full slate that day because it was close to to Taylor's birthday. I was supposed to be taking her to see the new Jackass 3D movie because she loved that stuff. And, you know, I was going to do my duty, you know, as a good father and boyfriend. And so, you know, I was like, well, this is where it all got really bad. I said, well, let me take a bunch of caffeine pills. I had no-dose in my house because I used to occasionally cut my cocaine that I sold with the no-dose pills. So without even thinking about it or paying attention to how many pills I took, I just poured some in my hand from the bottle and ate them all and literally had a caffeine overdose. The medical psychiatrist who's an expert on all types of psychotropic drugs and everything, Dr. Gerald Shiner, he put that in his report. You can have a caffeine overdose. That's what happened to me. I mean, I literally couldn't even think or, you know, talk right. It was insane. And so, you know, I did something I hadn't did in years. I said, well, let me take a Xanax to try to mellow myself out. And I took one, and the caffeine was still so strong that the one Xanax, which would normally put me to sleep, I mean, I'm not trying to be funny, but I could take half of a blue football, they call them, right now, and I could get robbed and raped, and I'd never know it. That's how sensitive I am to downers like that. But that night, that day, that caffeine was just so strong in me. I took one, and it didn't work. Took another one, and it didn't work. Took another one, and they weren't working. And I'm like, oh my God, I need to calm down because I couldn't drive. I felt like I was going to throw up. I'm going through the memory right now of it, and my stomach feels almost as sick now as it probably did then. And it was just, I don't know if you ever drank alcohol, but anybody who's drank alcohol, they drink too much too fast, and it just ends up hitting you like a freight train. And that's kind of what happened, because as the caffeine wore away, the Xanax took over. And you can see it from my text messages. I would love to maybe send a picture, and you could put them up on a screenshot one day. You could see the text messages between me and a couple other people as I slowly begin to misspell my words.
You have 1 minute remaining.
And to this day, I still don't know, and I don't blame Taylor for it at all, but to this day, I still don't know why, when she seen me misspelling my words like I was, which I don't normally do, why she didn't just come to the house, or the apartment. I still don't understand that, but I don't blame her in any way at all, not whatsoever. I was the one responsible, and I am responsible. But just that overload of Xanax just knocked me out. I mean, I briefly remember cooking them dinner, and not to get too sensitive, but, you know, I cooked them. When they did the autopsy, they showed that I did cook what I said I cooked for them. You know, when they did the autopsy, they were able to prove that. And, yeah, I can delve a little bit more into it here in a minute when I call back.
Okay. All right, sounds good.
All right. So, again, leading up, I mean, there's so many caveats to this, but because, again, I literally, if anybody, you know, wants to research Xanax, or if they know about Xanax, they know that some people call them mind erasers. You just don't remember. Some of my last memories at all for that day were, you know, beginning to cook dinner. But after that, I don't remember anything after that. So around 5, 6 o'clock p.m., I have no memory after that. I just don't. And it just really got, you know, whatever happened, I can't have a memory for it. Even the police didn't understand that. But sorry, there's a couple people that were, I don't know, getting annoyed because I used the phone back to back. But anyhow, so again, that's my last memory, is, you know, brief memory of me cooking dinner for them. And after that, only thing I remember is waking up and seeing that my phone was dead. And again, I was selling drugs at the time, so, you know, I knew I had to check my phone. So I'm in my bed, and I wake up, check to see my phone is dead. I don't never let my phone die. You know, my phone just doesn't die. So I plug it in. I see I had like I don't know, like 100 missed text messages and calls, you know. So I mean, I don't know how long I was sleeping for, but I was obviously sleeping for a long period of time. And so I briefly get up, kind of groggy at this point. Door was shut, TV's on loud. Open my bedroom door. Water just is literally like flooded into the hallway. Like if I'm standing at my bedroom door and I look out, probably 10 feet to the left is where the bathroom is. So water had flooded from the bathroom all the way out into the hallway, into the living room, into the kitchen, into the hallway of the apartment, and all the way into almost in another apartment next to mine where the laundry room was. I mean, it literally flooded that long. And I don't know what time the bathtub got turned on, but I know the neighbor upstairs said they heard that, because they heard me give him a bath every night. That was one of the girls' testimonies. It wasn't Jennifer Lewandowski. It was another girl that lived above me. She said she used to hear me give him a bath every night at a certain time, and so she said she heard the water come on that night at the same time, and they just didn't pay attention to it. So it ran until I happened to get up and go in there and see them, and it's just, you know, the first words out of my mouth, and I'm not someone I don't really curse like that anymore, but the first words out of my mouth were, what the fuck? Because I just seen so much water, and it was just bad. And so I go to the bathroom, open the door was shut, which is a normal thing, because anytime I put them in a room, or they go into a room, they would shut the door all the time, but they can't open it because they're tall. My daughter's a very ambulatory, you know, young girl. But they said they can't open the door though. It's not something they can do. So they obviously got stuck in there, and I mean, as I open the door, I see her on the floor. And so I pick her up first because I see her on the floor. Go take her into the room. Go back, grab my son who was in the tub. He still had his clothes on. I go grab him out the tub, take them in my room. I set them down. They were kind of next to each other, and I'm trying to give them mouth to mouth. I'm trying to push water out of their stomach. Just hoping beyond hope, like, hey, maybe there's a chance, but like in my heart, it was like a deep sinking pit in my stomach. You know, I just couldn't. There's nothing I could do, and I kind of knew it as much as I hated that. There's nothing I could do about it, and so I tried, and then so I immediately called Taylor first, which to this day I still don't know why I called her first. I mean, I guess we live together. You know, we're raising these kids together. So I believe that's why I called her first. Then I call 911 immediately. Well, my phone, remember, it was dead, so it had died when I called 911. So I called right back, and that's even in the police report. But when I called right back, the 911 operator told me, ma'am, calm down. She thought I was a woman. I was so frantic and freaking out, and like just this. So once I got a hold of them, I said, hey, I need help. I said, my kids, I think they're drowned. I think they're dead. And, you know, and so they're like, okay, we're sending someone out here. Well, at that point, I didn't know what else to do, so I'm just like looking around, and like I had spent like $50 on that talking pink bear from the new Toy Story movie that year for my daughter, and she hated it. She hated the toy. It just freaked her out. It was creepy to her, but it was something that, like, I thought that she was going to love it one day. So I seen it was sopping wet, so I picked it up, threw it in her crib. The fire alarms were still going off because it was smoke, steam. You know, I hate to be so poignant about that, but it was steam in the apartment. And so I had to take the fire alarms and take them down because it was just like chaos. It felt like being in like a hell in a horror movie, you know. And, you know, they questioned me about that. Oh, why did you do that? You were trying to cover it up. No, I wasn't. I just needed peace and I needed quiet because it was just chaos. And it just, like, everything crashed. You know, it was worse than losing my brother at that time, you know, when I lost him years before that. And, you know, then the police ended up showing up and You know, before they even asked me anything really, they kind of just a couple brief, simple questions, and they immediately put me in cuffs. And I was just kind of shocked because like I didn't expect to be put in cuffs. I knew that this was an accident, but they just didn't see it that way at all. And so yeah, that was kind of like, I hate to rush through it, but I got these people about this phone, so.
So after you were arrested and charged, were you housed away from other offenders while on trial due to the fact that your case involved children?
No, I was not. In fact, and I believe Wayne County Jail did that on purpose. And in fact, I was supposed to be in separate bullpen every single time I went to court, and I never was. And you know, it literally just shows you the grace of God that nobody ever tried to assault me, nothing ever crazy ever happened. I mean, every single time I went to court, I was in the bullpen with everybody. And in Wayne County Jail, I mean, you're in there with 150 people at a time sometimes. And there was one incident later on when after I had been through trial and on TV a few times, where some guys, you know, they thought they were going to try to jump on me, but I didn't let it happen. But like I said, I mean, there was another guy who realized who I was after we were cool. He tried to jump on me in a elevator, and this one officer who's like one of the slowest people I ever seen, he moved like lightning that day to stop that guy from jumping on me. He was, like I said, man, God in His grace and His miracles have been with me throughout all this, and there's no other explanation for it but the grace of God, and it's just crazy. So, it's not crazy, it's awesome, and it's miraculous. And you know, when I came to prison, I had some few incidences, but there was nothing that's crazy that's went on. Again, I've been taken care of this whole time. I have one of the best jobs now in the state that you can possibly have, and I've been in the same prison for all these years. And you know, I've had a few people who didn't like me over the years, but you know, other people have stood up for me when they realized the truth. And you know, I believe that same grace will carry me home and get me out of here one day. You know, through a commutation, or if they change the laws in Michigan, because the laws on diminished capacity and voluntary intoxication are one of the most unfair laws in the country, because 43 other states are not so restrictive in regards to that law like Michigan is. So I'm just ready for God to get me, you know, going home. And if He don't, then I'm going to continue to try to help as many people as I can who are in here and from in here. So
that's good. That's good to hear.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you offered any plea deals while you were on trial?
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And in fact, the prosecutors were literally forcing my daughter's mother to look at the pictures of my children, and as I heard her screaming about it, and it was just really bad. Hold on, I'll tell you. So, no, I was never offered a plea deal though. Never.
Okay. So after you were convicted and received your sentence of life without the possibility of parole, how did you react emotionally?
I hate to say I expected it, but I did, and I even told it. It's even on my transcripts. I told Judge Vera Massey Jones as I walked out the courtroom. I said, "Hey, Judge," I said, "You're wrong." I said, "But God bless you anyway," because I was tricked into taking a bench trial. I messed up and did not take a jury trial like I should have, and you know, that's something that bit me really bad, and I should have took a jury trial, which most of my family were telling me to do, but I had always listened to my first thought my whole life, and I said, let me try to listen to somebody else for a change, and I shouldn't have listened to my lawyer, William Winters. I shouldn't have listened to him, because the only thing he did good for me was bringing in Dr. Gerald Shiner, and medical examiner from Oakland County, whose name is Dragovich. Both of them are on my side. Both of them wrote reports making it very clear that I couldn't have possibly even formulated any specific intent to do this, and that it was simply an accident. There was no physical bruising on my children at all, whatever, to show that somebody had tried to purposely hold them down while drowning. And in fact, to the contrary, both doctors say the evidence was obvious that this was an accident. And the majority of children do die by drowning, which I never knew that until I went to trial, but they had brought experts in to explain that. But so yeah, that's how that went.
Okay. So how do you spend your time in prison these days?
Well, like I said, I have a real 9-to-5 job. I work for a print shop where I do graphic design and kind of manage the shop. And Besides that, I do a lot of poetry and gospel rapping. I help run the church here. I go to U of M classes, theater classes, U of M creative writing classes. I do Albion College classes. I did sociology last semester. I'm doing Albion College law course this semester coming up, and I'm getting ready to start doing what's called prisoner observation assistance, where I watch suicidal people who are in the hole, and and you do get paid for it, but I'm doing it, for a certificate and to help people. You know what I mean? And it's going to take a lot of time out of my day, but it's going to be worth it. So, I stay very busy, definitely.
Have you been diagnosed with any mental illnesses?
No, sir, absolutely not. And in fact, again, Gerald Shiner, he is a well-renowned clinical psychiatrist out of Birmingham, Michigan. He makes it very clear that I seem to be well put together. I mean, he did extensive interviews with me for probably a week or two while I was locked up in the county jail.
So is there anything you'd like the public to know about yourself or either of these cases?
Well, like so many people in America who just come from unfortunate, situations, everybody isn't what they look to be at face value. We have so much more worth than what the society may think of us as, and
you have 1 minute remaining.
I'm looking forward to continuing helping people in here, and if I go home, coming back into the prisons and helping people out there in the streets. If I do go home, and this is just a horrible, most tragic accident that you can ever have, and I am 100% responsible for it. I never will take any kind of try to get pity for what I allowed to happen, because I should not have allowed that to happen, and that's one of the things that sometimes haunts me. I wonder, what were my kids wondering, where's my dad? Because I was with them more than anybody, and my whole family can attest to that. Even Taylor Stafford will probably admit that if you ever get a chance to get a hold of her, but just that, the same grace that you want in life, have that same grace for other people. That's what I would say at the end of the day.
Before we conclude this interview, is there anything you'd like to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
That's a good question, because I feel like we've talked about a lot of stuff. I guess the only thing I could say is that if anybody listens to this and they make a snap judgment, or they look into the situation, my case itself, and they make any kind of snap judgments, please don't do that, because again, as I said earlier with one of my closing remarks to your last question, is the same grace you want for yourself, give it to other people. I'll say this. This is very important, because I'm just go into what I'm saying. One of the main things everybody wanted to know during my trial, my whole family wanted to make sure that this was an accident, because I'm gonna tell you, they love me, but they wouldn't have stuck with me if I would have actually did this. And all my family still supports me. My friends, I had friends come out of the woodworks, man, from when I was growing up as a kid on the west side of Detroit. I hadn't talked to them in 10, 15 years, some of these people, and they were coming out of the woodwork to help, to support me, and to stand for me and be like, hey, we know this guy. He wasn't always the greatest person. He was like a Robin Hood. Sometimes he would, beat up the bullies or steal from the rich to give to the poor, but he's not this person that, they're making him out to be, And so I had old friends, my family, who once they found out, this was an accident, they all stuck with me. They still stick with me to this day. But one of the things that everybody wanted to know during trial, including myself, was, did my kids suffer? And according to even the Wayne County medical examiner, I'm trying to remember his name off the top of my head. I can't remember it right now, but he's actually not very well known, because they hid it very well, but in the 70s he used to actually fabricate a lot of reports for situations like this just to get people charged. But anyhow, even he admitted that the way a child that young, the way that their physiology works, that our natural reaction, or even as an adult, our natural reaction from when we have trauma is for our body to defend itself and to shut down. And due to that, and I ain't trying to make any kind of excuses for anything, or but this is what the expert said. It's in my transcripts. If I ever had to get them, I could show people. They didn't suffer, and that's something that even when I knew that this was an accident, I still used to have that horrible feeling like, man, did they suffer? Did they suffer? And when I heard that, even coming from that doctor who wasn't on my side, the Wayne County medical examiner, it was something that took a real load off. And so, with that being said, please don't let nobody just I really pray that nobody just slams me or blasts me or tries to make me out to be bad. Just really, really, if you want to know more, find out more, ask more. I'm an open book. I will answer any question about this because I don't have nothing to hide, and I'm not trying to be self-serving in this. My goal is to just help people because I don't know if people realize the plight that Xanax really is on society right now. I mean, they give Xanax to kids in middle school nowadays for getting bullied. A kid can go to the doctor and with their parents say, "Hey, I've been getting bullied," and they'll give them Xanax now. I mean, and Xanax is it's like a silent threat that a lot of people don't know it's as bad as like a oxycodone or hydrocodone or any things like that everyone else thinks is so bad, which it is. But Xanax they're a silent threat. They really are. And so, yeah, just again, be mindful of people in my situation, because there's plenty of other people in my situation. Be mindful of giving people the same grace that you need. And be mindful of the dangers of a pill like Xanax and other psychotropic drugs like it, because they're not all good. They come from doctors. They're not all good. And this may sound a little bit fringe off the wall to say this, but the word pharmacy comes from the Greek and the Latin word pharmakia or pharmica, and that word in its original sense means witchcraft. And I'm not saying all doctors or things that come from pharmacy are witchcraft. I'm not claiming that. But there are some evil inventions that pharmacies do come up with, okay? And, even Celexa, which was the pill that my daughter's mother was on, she used to be so nice when she was on it, but one day she forgot to take it. We got to a horrible argument because of it, and I asked her, I said, "Why aren't you taking your Celexa?" She said, "Because you don't know, it makes me want to murder people." And I'm like, the way she said it just threw me off, like she was serious. And so that's the point I want to make about how sometimes psychotropic drugs can be dangerous. But anyhow, so yeah, just offer grace to people the same way you want it. Don't make no snap conclusions or judgments when it comes to me or people in my situation. And please beware of Xanax, and just ultimately realize just how awesome like the grace of God and Jesus have been in my life, because I've had knives put in my face multiple times in prison, not over my case, but because I am strong in who I know I am in the Lord and the grace that I've been given through Jesus. I've been safe and saved and given a great job. I mean, I literally just had a situation in my job where I had Tylenol on the job, and you're really not supposed to have it unless the medical gives it here, even though I can buy it off the store. It's so crazy, Tylenol. I've had my job for 12 years. Well, they were acting like they wanted to fire me, but these people don't know me. So my main boss that works in Lansing, which is the capital of Michigan, he got with the deputy directors of NDOC and was like, "Hey, look, we need this guy." And so it took me 8 days, but I'm back working my job. And so it's just another awesome example of how God is good. And as I continue to live my life the right way and do things the right way, I'll continue to be successful. And ultimately, that's the best way to be successful, is to do things the right way. But hey, the scripture says that even God reigns on the just and the unjust. So sometimes he helps people even when they don't deserve it. So yeah, I think that's how I would just conclude, man.
That was my interview with Steve Nicholson. Thank you for listening.